The Vexari scout ship hovered silently above Earth's atmosphere, its advanced cloaking technology making it invisible to human detection systems. On the bridge, Commander Zulthrak studied the holographic display with 6 narrowed eyes. "Such a small planet for such a noisy species," he said to his science officer. "These humans have barely reached their moon, yet they flood their solar system with radio signals and space debris." Science officer Mevlaria adjusted her sensory apparatus. "Our biological scans are complete, Commander. Humans appear to be soft-bodied omnivores with minimal natural defenses. No claws, weak teeth, thin skin, and limited sensory capabilities. They would rank quite low on the predator scale." Zulthrak flicked his tail in dismissal. "As expected. Add Earth to the tertiary acquisition list. We'll return when we've dealt with more significant worlds." This casual assessment in 2157 would prove to be the greatest miscalculation in the Vexari Dominion's 50,000 years of interstellar conquest. 3 months later, Linda Pearson trudged through the Alaskan snow, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. As the lead researcher at the Coldfoot Climate Station, she was used to isolation. What she wasn't used to was the strange readings her equipment had been picking up for the past week. "Something's not right," she muttered, adjusting her heavy pack as she climbed the ridge. Her monitoring stations had detected unusual electromagnetic disturbances that matched no known natural phenomena. As she crested the hill, Linda stopped dead in her tracks. In the valley below sat a metallic object unlike anything she'd ever seen. It was roughly the size of a small bus with a sleek, curved hull that seemed to shift colors in the dim Arctic light. More surprising was the figure moving around outside the craft, tall with 6 limbs and a long segmented tail. Any sensible person would have turned and run. Linda Pearson was sensible about most things, but her curiosity had always overruled her caution. She reached for her camera and began to slowly make her way down the slope. The alien, for it could be nothing else, was clearly struggling with a panel on the side of the craft. It kept making adjustments, then checking a device on one of its limbs, only to shake its elongated head in what looked remarkably like frustration. "Need some help?" Linda called out when she was about 50 feet away. The alien spun around so fast that it lost its footing on the icy ground and fell backward. The reaction was so unexpectedly human that Linda had to suppress a laugh. "I come in peace," she said, holding up empty hands and speaking slowly. "Are you hurt? Is your ship damaged?" The alien scrambled back to its feet and reached for something at its side. A weapon, Linda realized too late, but instead of firing, the creature hesitated, its head tilting in what might have been confusion. "I'm Linda," she said, pointing to herself. "Human from Earth." She pointed to the ground. "You're on Earth." The alien's response came as a series of clicks and whistles, but its body language, pointing to the damaged panel and then making a gesture that looked like frustration, was unmistakable. "You need help fixing your ship," Linda said. She stepped closer, moving slowly. "I'm an engineer. Maybe I can help." The Vexari High Command received the emergency transmission with disbelief. A scout ship compromised? By a pre-FTL species? Admiral Krenvork's faceplates flushed dark blue with anger. "Impossible." "The report is verified, Admiral," his aide responded. Scout vessel TZ-419 suffered a propulsion malfunction and was discovered by a human before repairs could be completed. "And this human helped repair our scout ship?" The Admiral's voice carried clear incredulity. "Yes, Admiral. Using only primitive tools and observation, the human identified the thermal regulator issue and assisted our officer in creating a temporary bypass." The Admiral paced across the command deck. "This changes the assessment parameters. No species previously encountered has approached unknown technology with anything but fear or hostility." He stopped abruptly. "Prepare the diplomatic vessel. We must accelerate our timeline." 6 weeks later, headlines across Earth screamed the news. "Aliens land in Geneva. First contact. We are not alone." Inside the hastily constructed meeting facility, Ambassador Gregory Howard led the Earth delegation. Despite the pressure, he maintained a calm exterior as the Vexari diplomats entered. Lead diplomat Zexitral was an impressive figure, standing nearly 7 feet tall with ornate markings covering his 6 limbs. The translation devices they had provided allowed for basic communication. "People of Earth," the alien began, "the Vexari Dominion welcomes you to the galactic community." The words were pleasant, but something in the tone reminded Gregory of old nature documentaries where predators stalked unsuspecting prey. "We offer you protection, technology, and a place within our empire," Zexatral continued. 1,000 of your worlds have already benefited from our guidance." Gregory smiled politely. "That's quite generous. How many of these 1,000 worlds chose to refuse your guidance?" The alien's upper limbs twitched slightly. "Refusal would be illogical. We bring order and advancement." "Even so," Gregory replied, "we would appreciate time to consider your proposal. Our planetary governance requires consultation with all nations." "You have one of your months," Zextral stated. "We will return for your answer." After the aliens departed, Vice President Danielle Wright turned to Gregory. "They expected us to just roll over, didn't they?" Gregory nodded grimly. "They did, and that tells us everything we need to know about their intentions." At a classified facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Major Samantha Collins watched as scientists examined the data package Linda Pearson had collected during her encounter. "The propulsion system uses principles we've theorized but never been able to implement," Dr. Frank Martinez explained, his fingers flying across the holographic interface. "Their material science is centuries ahead of ours, but their computer systems, they're oddly rigid." Samantha leaned forward. "Rigid how?" "They're incredibly powerful but linear in their processing. No quantum computing, no neural networks. It's all deterministic logic." Frank looked up with a glint in his eye. "And I think we might be able to use that." In another section of the facility, Linda Pearson was debriefing a team of xenobiologists. "The alien seemed genuinely surprised that I approached to help," she explained. "Almost scared at first, but then confused when I didn't attack." "Doctor," Olivia Jensen made notes rapidly. "And you said it watched you use your multi-tool with particular interest?" "Yes," Linda confirmed. "It seemed fascinated by how quickly I adapted the tool for different uses. At one point, I'm pretty sure it was recording me." Across the globe, similar conversations were happening in secret facilities. Humanity had been given 1 month to prepare their answer to the Vexari ultimatum. They were using every minute of it, not to decide their response, but to prepare for what would come after. What the Vexari couldn't understand from their evolutionary perspective, was that they had just challenged a species that had risen to dominance on their planet not through overwhelming strength or natural weapons, but through intelligence, cooperation, and an unmatched ability to turn adversity into advantage. The aliens had assessed humans as soft, weak prey. They would soon learn their mistake. 6 months passed before the Vexari returned to Earth. Their massive command ship emerged from light speed just beyond the moon, flanked by 12 smaller vessels. Admiral Kosvarin stood on the bridge, his tail swishing with anticipation. "Open. A channel to the human leadership," he ordered. "I expect they have prepared their submission documents." His communications officer worked the controls. "Channel open, Admiral." "People of Earth," the Admiral began, his voice translated and broadcast to every corner of the planet. "The grace period granted by the Vexari Dominion has ended. We have returned to accept your formal integration into our empire. Prepare a landing zone at your Geneva location for our diplomatic corps." The response came not as a meek acceptance, but from a human woman in a military uniform. Her insignia identified her as General Allison Reeves of the newly formed Earth Defense Force. "Greetings, Admiral," she said with calm professionalism. "Earth has considered your proposal and respectfully declines. We wish to establish peaceful relations as equals, not subjects." Admiral Kosvarin's skin darkened with anger. "You misunderstand, human. This is not a negotiation. Your species has been assessed and classified. Your technology level is insufficient for equal status. General." Reeves smiled slightly. "Perhaps your assessment is outdated. We invite you to scan our planet again." The Admiral gestured irritably to his science officer, who began the scan. Moments later, the officer stepped back from his console in shock. "Admiral," he said, voice quivering, "I'm detecting energy signatures consistent with our own defense systems at multiple points around the planet. There are orbital platforms that weren't present during our last visit." "Impossible," the Admiral hissed. "Check your instruments." "The readings are accurate," the science officer insisted. "They appear to have adapted elements of our technology." On the viewing screen, General Reeves remained calm. "While your diplomatic team was presenting your offer, we were studying the data collected from your scout ship. Dr. Ethan Wright, would you care to explain?" A human male in civilian clothes stepped into view. "The fundamental flaw in your assessment was classifying us based on our natural biological capabilities rather than our adaptive potential. Humans evolved not as the strongest species on our planet, but as the most innovative." The Admiral's tail lashed violently. "You cannot have reverse-engineered our technology so quickly. It is beyond the capabilities of a pre-FTL civilization." Dr. Wright smiled. "Yet, here we are, in the lunar command center hidden beneath the surface of Earth's moon." General Reeves ended the transmission and turned to her staff. "They're scanning every inch of our defenses," reported Lieutenant Gary Nelson, eyes fixed on his monitor. "All dummy emplacements are active and drawing their attention." "Good," Reeves replied. "Keep our actual weapon systems powered down until my command." The global defense strategy had been devised in the months since first contact. Knowing they couldn't match the aliens in direct firepower, Earth's leaders had agreed on a deception strategy. Hundreds of decoy defense systems had been built, designed to emit energy signatures similar to Vexari technology, while the real weapons remained hidden. "They're deploying ships," Lieutenant Nelson announced. "Formation suggests standard conquest. Pattern based on the data we extracted from their computers." General Reeves nodded. "Just as we expected. Signal all commands. Operation Mongoose is go." Admiral Cosvarin watched with satisfaction as his fleet moved into attack formation. "These humans show unusual defiance, but they will learn their place. Begin the standard subjugation sequence." The first wave of Vexari fighters descended toward Earth's atmosphere, targeting what their scans showed as primitive defense installations. Their weapons charged, ready to demonstrate the futility of resistance. Then everything went wrong. From positions not registered on Vexari sensors, Earth ships rose to meet them. Smaller than Vexari vessels but moving with unexpected speed and agility, they engaged the alien fighters in formations that made no sense to the Vexari tactical computers. "What is this?" the Admiral demanded as 3 of his fighters exploded. "Their ships cannot have such capabilities." On the bridge of the USS Defiant, Captain Olivia Martinez called out commands with practiced calm. Her ship, built in secret using a combination of human and adapted Vexari technology, executed a rolling dive that no Vexari vessel could match. "Targeting systems locked," her weapons officer reported. "Permission to fire?" "Disable only," Martinez ordered. "Remember your training. We want to capture, not destroy." The Defiant fired, its weapons striking a Vexari ship's propulsion system with surgical precision. The alien vessel spun out of control, its weapon systems offline. Across Earth's orbit, similar scenes played out as the human defense fleet engaged using tactics that confounded Vexari battle computers. The aliens had programmed their systems to expect logical, efficient movements, direct approaches, optimal firing solutions, textbook maneuvers. Instead, human ships dove, spun, and fainted. They accepted damage to gain position. They used debris as cover. They coordinated with a fluid unpredictability that the rigid Vexari tactical systems couldn't anticipate. In his command center beneath Cheyenne Mountain, Dr. Frank Martinez watched the battle unfold on holographic displays. "It's working," he said to Linda Pearson, who stood beside him. "Their computers can't predict our movements because they don't understand our thinking." Linda nodded. "When I helped repair their scout ship, I noticed their systems were incredibly advanced but also incredibly literal. They expect everything to follow logical rules. And humans have been breaking rules since we first started walking upright," Frank said with a grim smile. Our greatest strength isn't our technology, it's our unpredictability. After 3 hours of battle, Admiral Cosvarin faced an unthinkable situation, a stalemate. 5 of his ships had been disabled, with 7 human vessels destroyed. But the humans showed no signs of surrender and were adapting to Vexari tactics with alarming speed. Order a tactical withdrawal, he finally commanded, voice tight with rage. Return to the fleet marshalling point. His second-in-command looked shocked. Admiral, we have never retreated from a pre-FTL species before. This is not a retreat, Cosvarin snapped. It is a strategic reassessment. These humans do not fight like rational beings. They employ deception, misdirection, and accept tactical losses to gain strategic advantages. Their behavior patterns suggest a predatory intelligence we have not previously catalogued. As the Vexari ships pulled back, the Admiral studied the recorded battle footage. Something about the human tactics nagged at his memory. Then it struck him. They fought like the apex predators of worlds the Vexari had conquered long ago, not with overwhelming force, but with cunning, teamwork, and a willingness to take risks no sensible species would consider. Send a priority. Message to the High Command, he ordered. Subject classification update for species designation human. They are not the herbivorous tool users our initial assessment indicated. He paused, mandibles clicking in agitation. They are something far more dangerous. Predators who have turned their evolutionary intelligence toward the stars. As his ship jumped to light speed, Admiral Cosvarin felt something he had never experienced in his entire military career. Doubt. For the first time, the Vexari Dominion had met a species that might not be conquered through standard means. Species that thought like predators but cooperated like herd animals. A combination the Vexari had never encountered before. The hunt had only just begun, but it was no longer clear who was the hunter and who was the prey. The news of Admiral Cosvarin's failure spread quickly through the Vexari High Command. Never in their 50,000 years of expansion had they failed to immediately dominate a pre-FTL civilization. A special council was called, and for the first time in 800 years, the Vexari designated a species as a Class 1 threat. Supreme Overlord Zaxkur addressed the gathered commanders with cold fury. These humans have revealed themselves to be more dangerous than initially assessed. We will deploy the hunter-killer squadrons. The hunter-killers were the pride of the Vexari military. Soldiers genetically engineered for combat, equipped with the most advanced weapons in their arsenal, and trained to eliminate resistance without mercy. They had been used only twice in the last millennium, each time resulting in the complete subjugation of the target species within days. We will crush this resistance quickly, Zaxkur continued. There will be no more diplomatic offers, no more chances for submission. The humans have chosen war, and they will learn what that means when facing the Dominion. On Earth, the victory against the Vexari fleet had been celebrated briefly, but Earth's leaders knew the real fight was just beginning. In a secure underground chamber in Washington, President Eleanor Bennett addressed the Unified Defense Council. 3. Vexari will return, and they will come with greater force, she said, her voice steady despite the pressure. We need every advantage we can get. Dr. Catherine Rodriguez stepped forward. The leading expert in xenopsychology, she had spent months studying the limited data available on Vexari behavior and biology. Madam President, I believe I've identified a critical weakness in the Vexari approach to conflict, she said. Based on their biology and evolution, the Vexari developed intelligence as a defensive adaptation. They were herd herbivores who used numbers and technology to protect themselves from predators. Over time, they became the dominant species on their world not by hunting, but by overwhelming their threats with superior numbers and weaponry. She displayed a holographic model of Vexari psychology. Their entire military doctrine is built around the principle of overwhelming force to prevent extended conflict. They don't understand fighting against superior odds. They have no concept of last stands or suicide missions. Most critically, they have no framework for understanding those who fight for ideals, rather than simple survival. President Bennett, leaned forward. How do we use this information? We fight in ways they cannot predict, Dr. Rodriguez replied. We use small teams, guerrilla tactics, and strategies that no logical military commander would choose. The Vexari expect us to either surrender when faced with superior force or to commit all our resources to a conventional defense. They don't understand that humans evolved as pack hunters who can operate independently or in groups, who can adapt tactics on the fly, and who can accept tactical losses for strategic gains. General Reeves nodded in agreement. We already saw this in our first engagement. Their ships followed predictable patterns while our pilots improvised and took risks. Exactly, Dr. Rodriguez said. And there's something else crucial to understand. The Vexari have never encountered a species that could reverse engineer their technology so quickly. They believe technological advancement follows a fixed, linear path. The fact that we adapted their own weapons and used them against them in months rather than decades has deeply unsettled them. 3 weeks later, the Vexari returned. This time, their fleet was 3 times larger, with specialized hunter-killer vessels leading the formation. They bypassed Earth's orbital defenses and deployed ground forces directly to major cities, expecting to find humans cowering in fear. Instead, they found cities empty of civilians but filled with traps, ambushes, and small, highly mobile strike teams. Lieutenant Daniel Monroe led one such team in Chicago. A former Navy SEAL, he had trained his soldiers to fight using tactics derived from Earth's own predators. Remember, he told his team as they watched the Vexari dropships descend, they expect us to either run or to stand and fight in formation. We do neither. We strike and fade. We let them think they're the hunters until the moment they realize they're the prey. The Vexari hunter-killers, despite their advanced weapons and armor, found themselves frustrated at every turn. They would secure a building only to find the humans had already relocated. They would set up defensive positions, only to be attacked from unexpected angles. Their communications were jammed by frequencies that changed faster than their systems could adapt. Most confusing to the Vexari commanders was the human willingness to sacrifice resources. Buildings were rigged to collapse. Bridges were destroyed by the humans themselves to trap Vexari units. The aliens had no framework for understanding a species that would destroy its own infrastructure as part of a fighting strategy. On the 3rd day of the invasion, Lieutenant Monroe's team achieved something that sent shockwaves through the entire Vexari command structure. Using diving equipment and an approach through the city's waterways, something the Vexari, who evolved on a dry world, had never considered, they boarded a grounded Vexari cruiser. The 12-person team moved through the vessel using tactics derived from ancient pirate boarding operations, something the Vexari had no defense against, having long abandoned physical ship-to-ship combat as inefficient. Within 40 minutes, they had secured the bridge and captured the ship intact. When news of the captured cruiser reached President Bennett, she immediately recognized its significance. She requested a global broadcast channel and delivered a speech that was translated and beamed directly to the Vexari fleet. People of Earth and visitors from the stars, she began, her voice calm but filled with resolve. Throughout our history, humans have faced existential threats, from nature, from each other, and now from the stars. Each time we have not merely survived but emerged stronger, she continued, her words carefully chosen based on Dr. Rodriguez's psychological analysis. We did not evolve as the strongest species on our planet, but as the most adaptive, the most creative, and ultimately, the most dangerous. The Vexari have mistaken our restraint for weakness. They will learn that humans do not start wars lightly, but we will finish them. The speech was recorded by Vexari intelligence analysts and transmitted back to their high command. The reaction was unprecedented. For the first time in their history of conquest, the Vexari leadership experienced genuine uncertainty. Admiral Zexalara, watching the captured footage of human resistance tactics, turned to his fellow commanders. These creatures, he said slowly, they do not fight like civilized beings. They fight like predators, like the apex hunters that used to stalk our ancestors before we developed technology. He played a recording showing Lieutenant Monroe's team working together to trap a Vexari patrol. Look at their coordination, They're patient. They set traps. They use terrain. They communicate with minimal signals. These are hunting behaviors that should not exist in a technologically advanced species. The Vexari had always believed that evolution followed a predictable path, that species abandoned their primitive hunting or defensive instincts as they developed technology. The humans were proving this assumption catastrophically wrong. They had brought their predatory nature to the stars, and the Vexari were not prepared for what that meant. 2 years passed since the first Vexari ships appeared in Earth's skies. What the aliens had expected to be a simple conquest had become their longest and costliest conflict in millennia. The war had spread beyond Earth as humans, using captured Vexari vessels and reverse-engineered technology, took the fight to nearby star systems. Commander Jackson Lewis stood on the bridge of the Earth vessel Nighthawk, a ship built using human ingenuity combined with Vexari tech. It was part of what Earth forces now called the Ghost Fleet, ships that used modified Vexari stealth systems, along with human innovations to appear and disappear at will. "Status report," Lewis called to his crew as they prepared to emerge. "From hiding behind the third moon of a gas giant in the Proxima Centauri system. Vexari supply convoy approaching, sir," replied Lieutenant Susan Ward from the sensor station. 6 cargo vessels with 2 escort ships, just as our intelligence suggested. Lewis nodded. "Perfect. They still haven't changed their shipping routes, despite our last 3 raids. Their predictability is our greatest advantage." The Nighthawk's mission was simple but effective. Disrupt Vexari supply lines, capture useful technology and resources, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. The strategy was working. Across a dozen star systems, similar human ships were carrying out identical operations, forcing the Vexari to spread their forces thin, trying to protect their territory. "Prepare for attack run," Lewis ordered. "Remember, disable their engines first, then weapons. We want those cargo ships intact." As the human ship moved into position, Lewis reflected on how far humanity had come in such a short time. Earth scientists had not only understood Vexari technology, but had improved upon it in many ways. The aliens' rigid thinking was a weakness that humans exploited at every turn. The attack was swift and precise. The Nighthawk appeared seemingly from nowhere, its weapons targeting the exact spots on the Vexari ships where their shields were weakest. A vulnerability discovered by human engineers who thought about ship design differently than the Vexari. Within minutes, the convoy was disabled, with minimal damage to the cargo. As human crews boarded the vessels, the captured Vexari crew members watched in stunned silence. They had never encountered an enemy who could move so unpredictably, who seemed to anticipate their every defensive measure. One Vexari officer, watching the humans efficiently secure his ship, turned to his captor. "How did you know the shield configuration? It should have been impossible to target so precisely." The human soldier, Private Maria Lopez, smiled slightly. "We didn't know for certain. We had 3 different attack plans ready depending on what we found. Humans are good at improvising." This concept, improvisation, was almost entirely foreign to Vexari thinking. Their society valued order, precision, and following established protocols. The idea of creating solutions on the spot, of adapting tactics mid-battle, was something their training never covered. Back on Earth, Ambassador Nicole Williams prepared for a secret mission that might prove even more important than the military victories. Using a captured and modified Vexari shuttle, she would travel to meet representatives of other species within the Dominion, beings who had been conquered and subjugated over thousands of years. "The communications you've established are fragile," General Reeves warned her during the final briefing. "If the Vexari discover what you're doing, they'll throw everything they have at stopping you." Nicole nodded. "I understand the risks, but if we can build a coalition among these other species, we can fight the Vexari on multiple fronts. They've never faced a coordinated rebellion." Her mission was made possible by Ryan Powell and his team of hackers, who had managed to infiltrate the Vexari communications network. Using thinking that no Vexari programmer would consider logical, they had created backdoors and hidden pathways through the alien systems. "Their network security is actually quite good," Ryan had explained during a briefing. But it's good in a very specific way. They protect against attacks they can imagine. They can't imagine how humans think about breaking systems. Ambassador Williams's shuttle departed Earth under cover of a diversionary attack, slipping past Vexari patrols using a combination of stealth technology and flight paths that appeared as random sensor errors to Vexari systems. As she traveled deeper into Dominion space, Nicole made contact with representatives from a dozen different conquered civilizations. Some had been under Vexari control for thousands of years, their resistance long since crushed. Others were more recent acquisitions, still nursing the wounds of defeat. What united them all was their surprise at meeting a species that had successfully resisted the Vexari. For many, the very idea that the Dominion could be fought was revolutionary. Nicole shared human battle tactics, technical knowledge, and most importantly, the psychological insights that Dr. Rodriguez had developed about Vexari weaknesses. Meanwhile, the Vexari High Command was facing an unprecedented situation. Reports from across their territory described human ships appearing without warning, striking critical targets, and vanishing before significant forces could respond. More disturbing were the accounts from their elite units. Soldiers who had conquered hundreds of worlds now sent distress calls, describing being stalked by human special forces teams. Supreme Overlord Zax Kerr reviewed the latest reports with growing concern. "These humans actively hunt our forces," he said to his advisors. "Our soldiers report feeling like prey animals. This is unacceptable." His chief military advisor shifted uncomfortably. "There is worse news, Overlord. We have detected unusual communication patterns between several of our subject worlds. It appears the humans have made contact with other species under our rule." This development was perhaps the most alarming of all. The Vexari Dominion had maintained control partly by keeping conquered species isolated from each other, preventing any possibility of coordinated resistance. The turning point came at what would later be called the Battle of Proxima Centauri. Admiral Victor Martinez had developed a strategy based on studying Earthwolves, predators who hunted in coordinated packs. Using a fleet of 30 ships, he set a trap for the main Vexari battle group. When the Vexari fleet arrived in the system, human ships appeared to be in disarray, retreating in panic. The Vexari commander, following standard doctrine, ordered immediate pursuit to destroy the fleeing enemy. Only too late did he realize that the human retreat was a carefully choreographed deception. The fleeing ships suddenly turned and attacked from the front while hidden vessels emerged from behind moons and from within the rings of a nearby gas giant. The human ships moved in perfect coordination, surrounding the Vexari fleet and systematically targeting their engines and weapons systems with surgical precision. Admiral Martinez's orders had been clear: disable, don't destroy. The human strategy wasn't to annihilate the Vexari, but to capture their ships and crews intact. It was a hunting technique perfected over thousands of years of human evolution: isolate targets from the herd, disable them, and capture them. The battle ended. The Vexari flagship was surrounded by human vessels. Its engines were disabled, its weapons offline, but the ship itself was largely intact. Admiral Martinez opened a direct communication channel to the Vexari commander. "Your ship is disabled, your fleet is captured, but your crew can remain unharmed," Martinez said. "We are not barbarians. We don't seek to destroy you, only to end your empire's expansion. The choice between peace and continued conflict is yours." The Vexari commander, his 6 limbs rigid with shock, could only stare at the human on his view screen. Everything about this situation defied Vexari military doctrine. The humans had won a decisive victory, yet were offering terms rather than pressing their advantage to destroy their enemies completely. "Why?" he finally asked. "Why not finish us?" Martinez's answer sent chills through the Vexari command structure when the recording was later reviewed by their leadership. "Because humans understand something your species never learned. The most dangerous predator is not the one that kills, without thought, but the one who chooses when not to kill. That is true power." Supreme Overlord Zax Kerr of the Vexari Dominion called an emergency session of the High Council. In 5,000 years, this had happened only 3 times. The Great Hall, with its towering crystal pillars and ancient battle banners, filled. with the highest-ranking members of Vexari society. Many had traveled across the galaxy to attend in person, rather than through holographic projection, sensing that history was about to change course. "Play the recording," Zaxkur ordered, his voice echoing in the suddenly silent chamber. The center of the hall illuminated with a three-dimensional image showing the final moments aboard the Vexari flagship at the Battle of Proxima Centauri. The Council watched as human boarding teams moved through their most advanced vessel, with practiced precision. The humans neutralized resistance with non-lethal methods where possible. They demonstrated intimate knowledge of Vexari systems and biology. Most disturbing of all, they moved like predators who had studied their prey for generations. Then came the moment that had shaken the Vexari leadership to its core. Admiral Martinez addressing the captured Vexari commander. "We could have destroyed your fleet. We could have killed your soldiers. We chose not to. Understand this. Humans are predators, yes, but we're also something your kind has never encountered. Before predators with compassion. Predators who can choose when not to kill. This makes us more dangerous, not less." When the recording ended, the hall remained silent. Zaxkur let the weight of what they had witnessed settle before speaking. "In 50,000 years of conquest," he said slowly, "we have never encountered a species like these humans. Our entire understanding of evolutionary development told us that species either evolved as prey animals who developed technology as a defense, like our ancestors did, or they remained primitive predators bound by their instincts. The humans have defied this pattern." Admiral Tekvor, commander of the Dominion's home fleet, rose to speak. "The humans have infiltrated our command networks. They've made contact with subject worlds. The Drax and Volteran systems are already in open rebellion. Our scouts report human ships assisting them." "How did this happen?" demanded Science Director Mevzak. "Our assessment classified them as simple omnivores with minimal natural defenses." Dr. Julia Bennett watched this scene unfold from her observation room aboard the captured Vexari flagship. As the xenopsychologist assigned to study the captured Vexari command staff, she had spent weeks interviewing the aliens and observing their reactions. Now, through the communication link established by Powell's hackers, she was witnessing the moment that would change galactic history. She recorded her observations, speaking quietly into her datapad. "Today I witnessed the exact moment when the Vexari understood humanity's true nature. It wasn't our technology or our weapons that finally terrified them. It was the realization that unlike any species they've encountered in their 50,000 years of conquest, humans combined the strategic thinking of an apex predator with the social cooperation of a herd species, the adaptability of an omnivore, and something entirely unique, the ability to understand our enemy so completely that we could choose to spare them not from weakness, but from strength." On Earth, President Bennett and the Unified Defense Council watched the same feed. Years of sacrifice and struggle had led to this moment. Despite being outmatched in technology and numbers at the start, humanity had turned the tables through innovation, adaptability, and their unique evolutionary history as social predators. "They're considering their options," General Reeves noted as the Vexari Council continued its debate. "For the first time in their history, they're facing a species they can't simply overwhelm." 2 days later, a Vexari diplomatic vessel approached, Earth under a flag of truce. It carried Overlord Zaxkur himself, the highest authority in the Dominion. Landing in the same location in Geneva where the first contact had occurred, he requested a meeting with human leadership. President Bennett, flanked by military and scientific advisors, welcomed the alien leader in a simple meeting room. The choice of location was deliberate. No grand hall or imposing chamber, just a plain room with a window overlooking a garden. "Overlord Zaxkur," Bennett said, "we welcome you to Earth in peace." The towering alien studied the human leader. "President Bennett, my visit here is unprecedented. No Supreme Overlord has ever negotiated directly with another species in our history." Bennett nodded. "There's a first time for everything. That's something humans understand well." The Overlord placed a device on the table, and it projected a document written in both Vexari and English. "This is not a demand for your surrender," he said. "It is a treaty between equals, the first such document in the history of the Dominion." The human delegation leaned forward in surprise. The document indeed proposed peace terms between equals, with mutual recognition of territories and a cessation of hostilities. Most surprisingly, it included provisions for the gradual independence of other species under Vexari rule. "What changed?" Bennett asked directly. 3 years ago, you came to conquer us." Zaxkur's expression was unreadable to human eyes, but his voice carried a new tone, something like respect. 3 years ago, we believed we understood the natural order of the galaxy. We believed that predator species remained primitive, bound by their instincts, while prey species like ours achieved civilization through cooperation and technology. He gestured to the window where birds could be seen flying between trees. "Your world showed us that we were wrong. You evolved as predators who learned to cooperate. You maintained your hunting instincts while developing compassion. You can think like us, yet also think in ways we cannot predict." The Overlord paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "The document before you contains a new classification for humanity, Apex Sentience, the only species ever to receive this designation. It acknowledges that you are not merely biological entities to be classified by physical attributes. You are living embodiments of that most fundamental universal law, adaptation." President Bennett studied the treaty carefully. The terms were fair, even generous. The war would end. Earth would remain free. Other species would gain their independence over time. Human and Vexari ships would have mutual access to designated trade routes. "And if we sign this," she asked, "what happens next?" "We learn from each other," Zaxkur replied. "My species has spent 50,000 years conquering. Perhaps it is time we spent the next 50,000 years understanding instead." The treaty signing ceremony was broadcast across Earth and throughout the galaxy. As Bennett and Zaxkur pressed their palms to the document authentication panel, the Vexari Overlord made a statement that would be remembered for generations. "The stars have witnessed today what we failed to see upon our first meeting. Humans are not mere biological entities to be classified by physical attributes. They turned our technology against us, our tactics against us, even our psychology against us. But when victory was theirs, they demonstrated a concept foreign to our understanding, mercy from strength. We do not sign this treaty from fear of human weapons, but from respect for human nature. The galaxy will never be the same." President Bennett's response was simple. "We came in peace. We fought when we had to. We now return to peace, wiser on both sides. This is not the end of our story, but the true beginning." And so it was that the galaxy learned what Earth's evolutionary history had produced. Not just tool users or social cooperators, but predators with the wisdom to know when not to kill. The most dangerous hunters the stars had ever known turned out to be the ones who chose peace from a position of strength. The moment had arrived and passed. The realization that changed everything was not just that humans were dangerous, but that their true power came from understanding when not to use that danger. It was a lesson the galaxy would not forget.